So thanks very much, John, and thank you to the organising committee and the ISA committee as well for inviting me. I don't like to start by contradicting my introducer, but I may not quite talk about the history of CASI, or let's say I might expand it a bit, because I wondered really how I could say a lot about the history of CASI. I believe I've been at quite a lot of them, although I feel the ones I was at I can't remember, and the ones I wasn't at, well, I might remember those, I'm not sure. So I thought a bit more about the title. History of CASI, well, it's kind of informative, but it might be a bit restricted. And then I thought, well, maybe I could look at the 20th birthday party to see, it was in Rosslare, I definitely was at that one, and to see if the title there was any help. Vihabli and Agfas, 20 Years of Growing, it's a fine title. It's been used before, of course. It was the title of a famous book about a child growing up on the Blasket Islands. But of course, it's not really accurate anymore because this is the 40th birthday, and it's also rather plagiarized. So neither of those, per accuracy and per originality, aren't a good start. So I thought again, Fiche agus Fiche, 20 plus 20, but that's also a bit derivative. 40 years in Irish, Dachud. Again, it is accurate, but not very original. So this is more like what I really want to talk about, my history of CASI, or more exactly my history of statistics. But of course, CASI has been a large part of that, as has the ISA. So just to start, for those of you who don't know me, let's just start with an introduction to who I am. These two photographs are the achievements I'm most proud of in the last year, or last good few years actually. On a bit like 20 years of growing on the top, but it's like 7 years of growing, I think. Both are 7 or 8 years of growing. On the top was my 250th park run in Portrush on the East Strand, where I walk very frequently these days and enjoy immensely. And on the bottom is completing the Camino Frances in Santiago at the cathedral. I come from Belfast. I grew up there and went to school in Belfast, and I moved on from there to Somerville College, Oxford. And Somerville, of course, was one of the first women's colleges in Oxford and has a long tradition. It was founded in the 1880s, and at that time, women weren't allowed to go to lectures, they weren't allowed to go to the library, they weren't allowed to do examinations. That might have been a good thing. They weren't allowed into the Oxford Union and so on. So Somerville had to set up really a parallel, and the other women's colleges, a parallel system for quite a few years. And even into my time, there was still a residue of that. So they have a very long and proud tradition. And in my time, the principal was Dame Janet Vaughan, who was a very inspirational person and principal. She worked as a graduate, young graduate. She worked in the East End of London on developing treatments for deprived people suffering from malnourishment and general ill health. And then she was one of the first people into Belsen and worked on cures or treatments for people suffering from severe malnutrition, starvation. So anyway, I spent a happy 3 years there and learned a lot of things, including some mathematics and many other things as well. And eventually, of course, I had to think about moving into the big bad world and possibly towards getting a job. So I thought operational research and statistics looked possibly like they might be mathematical, but there were certainly some jobs coming up in those areas. So I studied a master's in Cardiff in mathematical statistics and operational research. And in fact, I did get a job, not what I had imagined, but I got a job as a research assistant in what was then the new University of Ulster in Coleraine, and kind of stayed there ever since in various guises. I did a PhD part-time while working as a research assistant, eventually became a lecturer. in Coleraine, although now I'm based in Jordanstown, and I have been off and on over the years. And I've had a few sabbaticals as well, so I managed to leave Coleraine from time to time and venture out into the wider world. This is just a question to keep you busy. It's a kind of a riddle. Which came first, the Irish Statistical Association or the Conference of Applied Statistics in Ireland? You can message me about that or not, as the case may be. So moving on to the previous CASIs. So we moved around a lot. The first one, as many of you will know, was in Blessington and Wicklow in 1981. I wasn't at it myself. I'll come back to that later. So that was in Wicklow. We went to Galway, Down, Kildare, Kilkenny, Louth, Limerick, Derry, Kildare, and so on. I'll not read them all. I think there's a different county for every year of this slide, of which there are 20 years growing. So we really got around Ireland, and eventually, of course, we repeated. Oh, well, sorry, we went to Derry twice. That was my fault. So the ones in red are the ones I was involved in organising. In 1988 that was the first one I organised with Norma Reid, who still lives in the area. And 1993, I organised again with Derek Bond, who also still lives in Portstewart, actually. So then, second 20, well, you'll see more repetitions coming in. Dundrum was always popular. I organised two in the second 20 as well, 2002 in Ballycastle. So I moved county. Actually, this is my home county. And 2010 in my hometown, my now hometown, in Portrush. And in between times, well, we revisited Dundrum a few times and revisited Ballymascannon a few times. And now we're, well, perhaps not even all over Ireland, we're all over the world. So I guess we're expanding. So within CASI, of course, there are topics that are always recurring. And apologies if I haven't your favourite topic on this list. It's kind of my list. But there are many other topics that are recurring as well. Mathematical statistics, of course, underpins a lot of what we do, arguably all of what we do. Medical, veterinary, bio, and agricultural are very popular within the conference and within statistics generally. And of course, many of us teach statistics and it's core to what we do. So we often have talks and discussions and events about teaching statistics. Official statistics is also an important side of the subject. And we have, within Ireland, we have the Central Statistical Office and we have NISRA in the north. So statistics are obviously collected here and in all other countries. And there's been various presentations from the people working in these areas. And in the computing areas, statistics, I think, and computing have been increasingly more tightly coupled. And myself have moved from a mathematics department to a school of computing. So that probably says it all, for me anyway. These days we've got big and complex data. We've got huge data sets and we've got very diverse types of data, video, sound, well, sound part of video, all sorts of genomics and other omics type data that are very complex. And then we have these ways of storing it and processing it at scale and distributed as well through the cloud and other ways. Latterly, data science has emerged as a kind of a mix of statistics and some areas from machine learning and artificial intelligence. And industrial statistics, of course, is quite pervasive as well and embraces a number of these topics. So, as I said anyway, I've highlighted teaching statistics because it's core to what a lot of us do. And for those of us teaching statistics, I'm not, well, I suppose I am sort of still because I still have a lot of PhD students, but I'm not at the cold face anymore. And my thoughts are with all of those of you who are. You've had a very hard few months, I know. So anyway, latterly, for quite some time really, we've been told about the benefits of feedback, and we all know how important it is to give good feedback to our students. So this is just an example of feedback being extensive for sure. This is a graph which some of you may recognise. We saw it for quite some months, or maybe it just felt like months. And of course, as often happens if you're involved in teaching statistics and giving feedback of this sort, there's the importance of labelling comes through quite clearly here. All graphs must include a title. We don't have one here. The y-axis needs labelling. The x-axis needs labelling. Use of gratuitous logos isn't a good idea, such as the NHS here. We all love the NHS, but they're not relevant to the data included in the chart. So it doesn't get extra marks. So, of course, it's also important to give positive feedback. So what went well up at the top, the graph makes better use of contrasting colour than the one submitted on the 28th of April. Well, I remember that graph on the 28th of April. It was very blue, as was the mood, I think. And the student's name, of course, is on the top. And at the bottom, we've got a summary. The work falls well below standards required. Well, that's common, I suppose, but hopefully we'll see better in the future. So back to CASI, a number of locations, of course, we visited more than once, particularly the Ballymascanlon. We were in it last year, so that shows how popular it is. And second most popular is Dundrum and Tipperary. I would say it's no accident that the Ballymascanlon is almost exactly halfway between Belfast and Dublin, and probably Dundrum is pretty well halfway between Dublin and Cork. So they're both good compromise locations. Just as an aid to future organisers, I thought I would have a look at what counties we hadn't visited. So we visited a lot, but I couldn't find a visit to Tyrone. There aren't too many cities in Tyrone, so that might be surprising. We do have the Sperrons, which are well worth a visit. Donegal, my favourite, well, my adopted county, I would say. I have a holiday home in Glencolmkill. Of course, Donegal is a long way away from absolutely everywhere, including Portrush. Well, Glencolmkill is anyway. Leitrim, just south of Donegal, is also quite remote and small. Sligo is the next county moving south. Armagh is, I need to speak up for, it's my mother's county. We haven't been there. Monaghan is neighbouring. Cavan was my father's county, so I need to speak up for that also. Mayo is definitely one of my favourite counties. We may have been there, I'm not sure. I couldn't see it. Maybe I didn't look enough. And Waterford, I think, as well. And there may be some Midland counties that we haven't been to. Couldn't quite remember them all, I think. So anyway. So just to revisit the first CASI, it was held in Blessington, as I said. Quite a number of familiar names here that have been repeat visitors for sure. Tony Greenfield, Eddie Goodall, Iggy Mercury, and so on. I've highlighted Adrian Raftery because he sort of revisited in 2017, I think that is. I've got this floating thing that's blocking things moving around here. So in 2017, and Adrian sitting there beside the Taoiseach and Kenny at the time. So second from the left. And this is occasion from being awarded the SFI St Patrick's Day medal. So he was there for the start, and he certainly has been a repeat visitor. So moving on, the next few, we were in Galway. David Cox made the first of a number of visits and keynote talks to CASI. He's been a great supporter of the conference over the years. 83, I've highlighted that because, well, for the only the reason is that it's the first one, definitely the first one I was at, and It was the first one in the north, in the Slieve Donard. I also remember it, so that was good. I particularly remember playing table tennis. I'll not name the people I played table tennis with on that occasion, but one of them I saw earlier was here today. I'm not sure about the others. And I also gave my first talk at CASI on that occasion. Estimations, failure time data, which is both right censored and left truncated. And my first talk on survival analysis, actually, which I'll come back to. So again, a number of familiar names and quite a number of former or current colleagues of mine. Well, as I said, I missed the first CASI in 1981. And that's because I got a better offer, really. I was on sabbatical in Cornell. It's a beautiful city and a beautiful campus. This is the campus on the left, and my office was just beside that left-hand tower. So we're looking at Cornell campus, which is very beautiful and very. It's quite. They have a big, because it's a land grant school. They have quite a big agricultural side to it. They make their own. Well, they sell their own meat, their own milk. They make their own ice cream, their own fruit, and so on. So quite a strong agricultural theme there, but also the humanities and arts and the sciences as well. It's on Lake Cayuga. You can see in the background one of the Finger Lakes. It's a beautiful area for hiking, canoeing, backpacking, and so on. And I did a lot of all of those. This is Beebe Lake, which is on campus. There are several rivers run through campus and lots of gorges, heavily glaciated area. Beebe Lake is the setting for the Cayuga, the Cornell Outing Club hut, where they have all their equipment, canoes and skis and tents and backpacks and all sorts. So there was lots of extracurricular activities as far as I was concerned. But I did do some statistics and learn a lot of statistics actually as well. And there were particular people that influenced me while I was in Cornell. I just want to mention a few of those. So Dennis Lindley talked about Bayesian statistics, for which he was a great advocate, but he was kind of before his time. I went to a course with Dr. Prabhu's in regenerative phenomena, and I found and read Calculation Prentice's book on survival analysis, which was a big learning experience. And finally met Marcel Newts and worked on these type problems. So just say a little bit about these guys. This is Dennis Lindley. At the time when I encountered him, he was touring American universities. I think he took early retirement, and he traveled around giving talks about Bayesian statistics. He published a few books on the subject then. And at that time, of course, it was regarded in statistics as rather a black art stroke novelty and something that would never really work anyway. But he was a very persuasive speaker and very entertaining as well. So I really enjoyed his talk, and it certainly changed my views on Bayesian statistics. They've changed again since, I mean, for the better, in that, of course, as we all know, they've turned out to be far from a purely academic topic and now a very much used and successful area of statistics. Regenerative phenomena, well, I went to a graduate course on that, and I would say I'm still working in a sense on regenerative phenomena, particularly what's called clickstream analysis. So we have a large project I'm working on at the moment. I'll say some more about it later on, but one of the sub-projects that I'm working on involves clickstream analysis of IPTV data. IPTV is Internet Protocol Television, so these services like BT's own service where they provide special programs on sports and movies and so on. I'm sure many of you have subscribed, particularly in these days of lockdown. So when you access such services, you essentially work your way through a series of web pages, and that's called they're click streams because they're coming live to you off the internet. And when you browse them, typically a handset is used, that you move from one web page to the next as you move towards a choice of what you might want to view. So we can think of these as a type of regenerative phenomena, and of course many of the methods that we have looked at over the years are potentially of use. And another area I started working on, and I guess still am, is survival analysis. I didn't really know what survival analysis was. Maybe I'd never heard of it before I went to Cornell, but in the Cornell bookshop, which was very extensive, I found a copy of Calculation Prentice's book, The Statistical Analysis of Failure Time Data, and bought it. So at that time, we'd begun collecting data on all the nurses in Northern Ireland. So we started, the data goes back to 1979, and we collected 10 years data by joining up all the monthly salaries tapes until we had a record of every nurse in Northern Ireland in that period working for the NHS, and all their jobs they held and how long they stayed for, and some other covariates concerning them. Of course, we thought it was huge, 50,000 records. Now it's hard to get out of bed to look at 50,000 records. So by 1981, I was starting to try and analyse this data. And up until then, I would say I'd focused mainly on the model side of it, the Markov models and what you could do with it, and making predictions from them and so on. And the estimation and inference side was fairly basic. So reading this book, I learned that what I was trying to do was very related to survival analysis, and the data that we had was statistically incomplete. I knew it was funny, but I hadn't quite a name for what that funniness was. But in fact, our data were both left truncated and right censored, and some of that came from the fact that we had time heterogeneity. So we were also, apart from it naturally being incomplete, we were creating incompleteness within windows to achieve time homogeneity that we could fit the models to. And we gave our first talk on that at CASI 83 with Owen Gribben. Owen Gribben was my first PhD student, and he visited me in Cornell and joined our study group of the book Calculation Prentices. Phase-type models, it turns out actually I had been working on phase-type models for some time, but I didn't know they were called phase-type models until I met Marcel Newts, and he gave a seminar in Cornell. He was using phase-type models with queuing theory and continued to do that over many years. And so I went to a seminar and I had a chat with him, and he invited me to Delaware, where he was working at the time, and had a team of researchers working on phase-type models. So I gave a seminar and learnt the name, and I'm still actually working on phase-type models, I would say. So back to CASI, 85, as I say, I missed it. No, I haven't said that yet, but I did miss 85. I'll come back to that. It was in Cork, and I've just highlighted John Spencer's talk there on Roy Geary, because the history of statistics has been also a particular interest. It wasn't on my list, but it's a particular, I would say, interest of CASI and of the Irish Statistical Association. And John was my former colleague in Coleraine. 86, we went to the Ballymascanlon, just for a change. And again, there were talks which I would say were kind of on the history of statistics, or diversity in statistics and statisticians. It's a nice title from Phil Boland, and an interesting talk. So, well, I missed CASI in 85 for a similar reason as 81. I managed to be lucky enough to get another sabbatical to the States, and I went to Princeton. The bottom left, that's where I stayed in the graduate college. And above it it's on the Appalachian Trail, and these are the Adirondack huts, the three-sided huts. I slept on a few of those in that year and subsequently. And the woods, or the Princeton woods, which were quite near the graduate college and quite near the Advanced Institute as well, actually. I used to go out jogging there every day, so it's very, very pleasant. So some of the people I met there, encountered, and they, I would say, had a lasting influence in my work are these guys. John Tukey, who's well known in statistics for his work on exploratory data analysis and robust statistics. I attended his graduate course. Noreen Goldman also gave a graduate course. Mathematical demography, I would say, and epidemiology have a overlap really with survival analysis, and a lot of the same problems to do with the structure of the data and the sampling schemes. So that was very interesting. Yehuda Vardy visited and gave a seminar, and his area at that time was incomplete data, which is something I've been interested in for some time. So say a little bit more about John Tukey. In 85, when I attended his course, it was his 70th year, and he was working for AT&T and Princeton Statistics Department, a joint appointment. And in Princeton, he had to retire that year at 70. So he gave a course, a graduate course, and that was his last course in Princeton. So there was quite an all-star collection of students, never mind the lecturer. And he was a very entertaining speaker and very inspirational. So among many other things, he had a great turn of words. He was quite an eccentric guy, homeschooled, and very much self-talk, very original thinker, I would say. But he has very good quotes and names for things as well. So these are some of his quotes. An approximate answer to the right problem is worth a good deal more than an exact answer to an approximate problem. The best thing about being a statistician is that you get to play in everyone's backyard. Quite a famous quote, but very, very true. So some of the work he had done, he came up with the idea of fast Fourier transforms. He was quite an accomplished mathematician and made very good contributions to mathematical statistics, but his philosophy was towards data-driven approaches very much. And I would say one of the first, if not the first, data scientist in a sense. So he came up with fast Fourier transforms, box plots, the Tukey range test. Very keen on graphical ways of presenting the data as well. And some nice words: jackknife estimation, projection pursuit, median polish, and particularly areas of exploratory data analysis and robust statistics. And he also came up with terminology. Software is attributed to him. The word software and the word bit within computing were coined by John Tukey. Sorry, got lost there. So we're now on to 88. Well, so 87's down below. Limerick, we're in Limerick in 87. Kildare in 89. I've highlighted 88 because it's the first one I was involved in organising in the Edgewater Hotel in Portstewart, jointly with Norma Reid. And we'll maybe hear from Anthony a bit more about the invited speakers, so I'll not say too much about those. They're people that cropped up on different occasions, and maybe come back to them. I bring my own talk because so this is 88. In 86 I met David Bell. He's the first author on that talk that I gave using the piecewise uniform distribution to model attribute values in the database. I met David Bell in 1986. We the new University of Ulster had merged with the Ulster Polytechnic in Jordanstown in 1984, and were thereafter University of Ulster. And I met David Bell, who was working in Jordanstown at the time, and he introduced me to databases, problems of databases and subsequently artificial intelligence. So we worked very close together, and I'd just like to pay tribute to him. He died very recently, and he was a great colleague. He was great fun to work with, and he was very enthusiastic about his subject, and a great guy. So anyway, we worked together for quite a few years, and had a number of PhD students together, and I think 3 European grants together as well on areas of statistical databases. So moving on then, the second 10 years into the 90s, I've ranked 93 because it was again Port Stewart, organised by Derek Bond and myself, and some familiar names there for the invited speakers. Again, we travelled various counties and returned to Ballymascanlon. So on to the second 20 years. Well, I didn't. No, I did. Sorry. Yes, I organised 2002 in Ballycastle and 2010 in Portrush. So Ballycastle was a new town and a new county. And Portrush is also, it's in Antrim. It's in the northeast of Northern Ireland, or Ireland. As those of you who were there might know. And Portrush is the northwest of Antrim, actually. So in 2002, I was working with Malcolm Faddy on phase type models for people moving through hospital systems, and also with Joanne Lamb on European projects on statistical databases. So they were invited by me. You probably all know Michael Goldstein. 2010, George Gettenby was Professor of Statistics in Strathclyde, a former colleague and collaborator of mine, and he has since died as well. So he was a very nice guy to work with and very enthusiastic. Paul Harper, we were working with on the Write and Match projects, and Vin Murta has been at many CASIs. I think he was at the first one there, and certainly he's attended on a lot of occasions, and also has worked as my colleague in the University of Ulster for a number of years, and we were involved in European projects together as well. So, well, the last few years, I do kind of remember some of those, and some of you will as well. Certainly, last year was back in Ballymascanlon, and it was lovely weather, I think. So a kind of tour of various counties and venues. David Cox was there, certainly not for the first time, and a number of other well-known statisticians. So, well, back to common topics. So this is my same list, but I'm highlighting these latter topics because I'm really focusing on them at the moment. The interactions between statistics and data science and artificial intelligence, ideas from big data and the cloud, and how they can be used in industry. So a lot of the work I'm doing these days is with the BTIC project. BTIC stands for BT Ireland Innovation Centre. It's a research and engineering centre in Belfast, jointly between Ulster University and BT, and we're funded from Invest Northern Ireland and BT. The actual funding to Ulster is just over 6 million, and we have appointed 17 new staff to the university and 12 new PhD students. That's what the money's mainly spent on. So the project organises into two streams called Intelligent Systems and IoT Cyber. But the engineering side of it is also very important and integrated into the project. So in BT Belfast, IPTV I've mentioned, Internet Protocol Television. Valula, concerned with predicting faults, is another focus of the project, and then the security side. And our staff in the project have got desks in BT Belfast as well as in Ulster in the research labs. So they're well integrated with BT. And the third leg of the stool is BT Research in Martlesham outside Ipswich, which we also work very closely with. A lot of this, of course, is via the technology, which BT know a lot about. And for the project generally, the benefits we think are more effective flow of research to engineering with very clear pathways, and we have a lot of meetings together and what we call embedded collaboration. So there are these two work streams, intelligent systems and IoT security, as I said. Intelligent systems really is focusing on artificial intelligence and data analytics. And in red there, future analytics, service analytics for IPTV, and intelligent process analytics are the three sub-projects that I'm particularly working on. So I'm just going to say a little bit about each of those to finish. So the first one I'm working on, 1.1a, is called Future Analytics, but what we're specifically focusing on for now is modelling the test-driven data analytics process, which is to do with creating software to automate the process and provide tests that the data are appropriate, they're appropriate to task, they're not changing in distribution or have got errors of various sorts, they're being tested appropriately and so on, that are really ensuring repeatability. And particularly, BT would have a lot of young new graduates and so on, or even student apprentices, and to ensure repeatability and validity and so on of the analytics. So there's a sort of similarity there with the production line. We're trying to kind of produce statistical results, and one of the aspects we're looking at is the use of KPIs within these pipelines, test-driven data analytics pipelines, so that we can monitor how well the whole process is going and whether it's working appropriately or not. So we're looking at Markov type models in that context. Another project we're looking at is from their software, using their software repositories. BT have huge software repositories and it's a big company, so lots of code. And so this project's really, I would say, initially anyway, and what I'm presenting here because of non-disclosure is kind of sort of what we were doing a year ago, really. So apologies if some of you have heard it already. We have moved on, obviously, but we're still looking at software repository mining, and we started off looking at basically classification of software errors based on features or variables. There's a list of possible ones on the right there. Software complexity metrics, or complexity variables such as number of operators, number of unique operators, the cyclomatic complexities, like to do with how many loops you have inside loops, that kind of thing. So we use them to predict when there might be a fault, initially using ordinary logistic regression and moving on to trees and so on. So of course getting labeled data is key to all this, labeled with the actual faults. And there are some public domain data sets we've been using, and now we're working closely with the software engineers in BT. I mentioned the clickstream analysis before, so browsing IPTV data. Again, the data sets are huge, and we're looking at models, particularly stochastic models, to characterize these clickstreams. So there's initially we were looking at clustering the streams in some sort of way. There's a survival analysis side to this as well, of course, as are the regenerative phenomena. We also want to be able to predict, and we want to be, particularly they would like to be able to predict where a customer is becoming frustrated, they're not finding the right program and so on, and they're about to move to a competitor. So that's a latent variable of some sort. So there's a kind of latent variable analysis to it. Intelligent process analytics, well, that's one of our 5 projects in work stream 1. So in a particular example here, we were looking at this process which BT call purchase and install, where, for example, I ring BT and I say I'd like to upgrade my broadband, and they say, okay, these are the options, and so they decide on what's going to happen, and the order is placed, and then there's a series of tasks have to be completed, and they give a time when it's going to be delivered. So the job here is about predicting in real time, predicting whether the order will be met or not in a timely way as we actually move through time, getting nearer and nearer. So the predictions become increasingly less useful as you get near the completion time. I don't want to hear that they were late. I want to hear in advance. I don't want to hear retrospectively, and so on. I'm looking for anomalies as a part of the TDDA pipeline. So we've been looking at ways of using ideative Markov chains to work out probabilities of getting various sequences, and seeing whether they might be likely or anomalous in some way. So just to finish off, this is I sort of tried to pull it all together. I'm not sure this was very successful. I think all I can conclude from my history is I seem to be still doing the same things as I was in 1981. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but I guess I do them in quite a different way, and they've moved along. So I'm still working on Markov models. I'm still looking at survival analysis, particularly for business data, but also healthcare data, and well, incomplete data, and obviously applications from computer science are still very central for what I do. So just to conclude, I'd like to give thanks to the technologies have made life well, I was going to say bearable, but maybe enjoyable at times. Helped us a lot anyway, not just Zoom, but we're not even using Zoom. Teams, obviously, Zoom, Skype for business. These aren't my jokes, but anyway, Covido ergo Zoom, from somebody called Rene Descartes, apparently. And another graph that you can give some feedback on later. So I think I could probably relate to some of these slices of the pie. Certainly relief at seeing other human beings, big time. Checking out co-workers' houses, backdrops, and of course the politicians' houses can be quite entertaining. And well, I don't have kids to remove from the bedroom, and luckily the cat is still asleep. He doesn't wake up until it's within about 4 hours of his next meal. So we've had a good time, and so on. On that subject, I'd also like to thank all the pets. I'm not so sure about this image. Dogs, maybe. My cat, I guess, is quite dog-like and certainly thinks like that dog. And of course, it's been quite confusing for the pets as well. But they've done their best. They've done everything we wanted from them, and we're certainly, in terms of my hoodie, great companions for lockdown. He sat through Zoom, Skype for business, the lot, and loves them all, and basically loves lockdown. Never had such a great time, and so that's the end. This is just I'm certainly thankful to live in a very nice place, and this is the Strand in Portrush where we have our park run. So thanks very much.